Hey everyone, I'm Michel Navedo, and this is the Friday 420. My next guest, Scott Blakey, aka Shantibaba, was an integral part of the golden era of cannabis breeding in the 1990s in Holland. As a founder of Greenhouse Seed Company and Mr. Nice Seedbank, he's responsible for producing some of the world's most legendary cannabis strains. Scott, it's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thanks, Michelle. It's a pleasure to be here.
So I ask a lot of people this question because I think it's fascinating to learn what brought people to this plant. Can you tell us about your first experiences with cannabis growing up in Australia and what drew you to the plant?
I had my first experience quite young, with a few friends on a fence outside a party. I'd never really smoked before, and it just did something to me that nothing else had done before, and made me a better person, I suppose. And I left it for a while, and then once I finished school and started university, then I kind of got into it pretty heavily and stayed there ever since. But it's my drug of choice, basically. I don't even call it a drug, it's a herb. So basically it was one of those things that just made me feel better, and think must have touched all the endocannabinoid system inside me in the right way.
Activated. Many people have the same experiences. Well, so you grew up in Australia, and then you lived in Australia for about 13 years, and during that time you collected a lot of different types of cannabis from those regions. And so I'm curious, what led you to start growing and start cross-pollinating those seeds? How did you learn to do this?
Well, it was kind of, I was studying biology, plant biology at university. Amongst other things, and every year I used to go to Asia in the summer holidays, sort of December, January, February each year, as when the university had time off. And I was always interested in plants of all types, sort of strange fruits, wax jambu, Indonesian fruits and Thai fruits. And so for Australians, the first place we go to is usually Indonesia or Thailand or India and those places. And I started to collect stuff, and of course, when you're studying genetics and plant biology, you kind of start putting things together and ideas. And I grabbed different seeds all over the place, like I normally do. I do that for flowers and everything still to this day. And then I suppose it became like infatuation, and I started to kind of conceptualize things in my head. And because we only did one crop a year, outdoor crop, I always tried to do as much as possible in different areas. I always had plants at different friends' houses, and then I'd come with a male that I had in a pot, and then sort of pollinate them, and then we tried them for the following year, and I give them all to friends and just watch how it grew. And we came across a few really interesting things, and some things that got us completely stoned and couch potatoes, but some that were really uplifting and like creative, and so I realized there was big diversity in the effect. And the effect has always been something that I've concentrated on more than, say, the terpene profile or the flavonoids or whatever, the shape of the plant. I was always looking for something that, everyone really enjoyed. And I used to really love to laugh with the friends, and we managed to do that every year with different plants, and plants obviously people like more, and others different people like different things. So it was a very big cross section of the community that enjoyed everything basically, and we called it dope in those days. It was never really. I'll turn that off. But it was just one of those things that kind of you just start to pick and choose, and then you keep those seeds, and because that was the great one from the last year, and then you hopefully go on with it and make it a little bit better. Sometimes it works, sometimes it didn't.
Yeah. So the answer is why not? Why not cross pollinate? And it's interesting because I've was speaking to someone recently, and has maybe 50 years of cannabis cultivation experience, and his advice was to not be afraid of seeds, to not be afraid of pollen, and because there's a whole world to be explored there, for home growers in this.
Fully agree. I mean, basically, it was just so interesting that how different plants adapted and the complexities of the effects and the flavors and the smells. And they were really sort of, everyone who saw the growing plants, they were always really interested, even if they weren't plant people, and so it was kind of a logical progression. Basically, we just went on with different things, and then I actually, in the university time, I sort of financed a lot of my travels with selling pot, like a lot of people in those days, and basically I went up to, I had a girlfriend who lived in Mullumbimby in northern New South Wales, and I was in Melbourne. And so I'd go up there at the end of the season, and there we pumped a lot of seeds in the ground and in state forests, and we did real guerrilla growing. We earned our money, let's just say. and some of the strains that, one of the first strain that we really made popular was Mullumbimby Madness.
Yeah.
Our version, there's a lot of people that would tell you about a Mullumbimby Madness, but I know that we had something incredible. I think we created it from Thai and Colombian land races in those days. Probably wasn't the strongest THC plant, but it was definitely had all of the things that made it like giggly and fun and uplifting. And so, of course, it would sell out in a matter of a day. Our whole crop for the whole year would go out in a day when I brought it back. I never really saw cannabis as a criminal thing either, and still to this day, I never think about it like that. It's more helpful for many people who don't want to take, pharmaceutical stuff. And so it was just a accidental kind of, job, a side job in those days. Yeah. And it became a bit more professional as I grew older and went to different countries,
So the Mullumbimby Madness became kind of world known as the quintessential Australian strain. But it wasn't until you moved to Amsterdam in the 90s that things kind of began to catalyze. And in Holland, you founded one of the first cannabis seed companies in the world. And so I want to understand what led to that. What were the laws like? What was the atmosphere like then?
Well, most people don't realize, but the laws haven't really changed. It's illegal to grow cannabis over 0.3% THC. Don't get caught is probably the best advice I could give anyone. And in those days, we all stayed very private and kept our plants away from anyone. And our little rooms, or several rooms, we had different things. And Amsterdam was the place where I discovered, sort of mother rooms that you could keep things growing all year, and cloning. That revolutionized everything. That just became, then we established libraries of plants, kept them alive, and then we brought them together with different males. And
yeah, because you no longer had just that one shot in the summer to grow. And
no, we had 5 or 6 crops a year, and in different rooms. So I was doing, sort of probably 8 or 10 rooms, and you could do so many different things. Okay, they weren't big productions, but they were enough to give a bunch of seed to Neville, or some to Rob Clark, or to different people, and or some buds. We'd sit around in the coffee shops. We didn't know anyone was famous in those days. We were just all a bunch of guys smoking dope and having a beer together. And it was, you just used to kind of get feedback from those guys. And later on, we realized we'd been creating some pretty interesting things, and we all stuck at it. So we did our 10,000 hours, and we became professional, I suppose,
Yeah.
And I always described it as being accidental hero, in fact, to this day. And basically, a lot of those guys, some of them are unfortunately not with us any longer, and they contributed a lot of really interesting plants to the gene pool. So I kept them all alive. I mean, Neville, he moved to Australia in the early 2000s, and left me with all of his plants, and I had all my plants plus a few other different people. And of course, I mean, I kind of started to combine different things together and pump out a lot of progeny seed from them, and then pass it around to different people, and they came up with some fantastic plants. And so it was kind of like that. There was no real definition or no direction at that stage. We were all just trying to find something that knock each other out.
Were you all kind of spurred on by what was selling in the coffee shops at that time?
Well, that kind of made it the commercial focus. You know what I mean? It's like the coffee shops that were run by different people, and still I'm in contact with a lot of them to this day. When you turned up with a bag of some buds that they hadn't seen before, they all wanted to exclusive eyes it and keep it in their coffee shops, and then everyone had to go to their coffee shop to buy the, you know, the Widows and the Super Silver Haze and all those things. So they're the businessmen of they were the businessmen that gave us enough money to continue doing our mother rooms and our cloning and flowering, but they were more the sellers of our pot and different other people's pots. So they were all necessary, you know, and actually, if you put all the links together, you become a pretty good chain, you know. And that was pretty much how it all started. There was no individual person that did everything, you know. Even though a lot of people claim it, still to this day, I'm still doing exactly what I've been doing for the last 40 years, and in fact, I've gone back to really, you know, sort of hands-on stuff, and I'm so happy. I'm back.
That's one of my questions later on, but I wanted to, before we move on, I wanted to talk about a bit more about the breeding and how it evolved into the CBD varieties that you bred with CBD Crew. The varieties that you created, the low THC, high CBD varieties, were basically spawned a multi-billion-dollar industry now, the whole CBD industry. How did your work on the CBD strains come about?
Well, I mean, the real story behind it is I was put in jail at one stage in Switzerland when 2003, and basically I was put in jail because THC over 0.3 was, you know, an offence, and all my plants were, you know, much higher than that, of course, and they were being used by many people on the black side of things, for example. And so while I was sitting there, and I had a bit of time to sit there, I thought, how do I continue doing my job and do it legally, you know? And so I realized that there's obviously a lot of other chemicals on the plant that we couldn't identify because no laboratories were working with us in the 90s. You know, we couldn't really test our plants or anything. They only had people to smoke it, to test it, and then they liked it or didn't like it, you know. So I kind of was self-rehabilitated. I came out, discovered that I got sponsored by a group, Canna Foundation, to do testing of plants. And I realized all the plants that I had in my library and Neville's library were basically high THC plants. So I started to I thought, well, the easiest way to do that in a very basic sort of explanation is I find pure CBD. And because most of mine were all pure THCs, I thought, well, when you combine them, let's see what happens. So when I came out, that was the focus. It was just to try to be legal, actually, you know, because I put my family through enough problems, you know, in those years. And the funny thing was that, say a plant was about 20% THC. When I combined it with the pure CBD, it came out as 10% CBD and 10% THC. It still remained at the 20% mark, but I brought it down, and that still wasn't legal, but we were started to get towards that high CBD, low THC area. The thing that I didn't do was I didn't use hemp. I used the traditional the varieties that I've been selecting, and I brought, because they have terpenes, and hemp doesn't really have a very big terpene profile. So I came around the sort of anti-clockwise way to combine it. And then once I'd identified the plant we called Remedy at that stage, which was the father pure CBD, all of a sudden, things were working out. When I tested it, it was a more scientific way. The CBD crew was actually pure scientific. I didn't want anyone to lie to people who were looking for high CBD and for medical reasons. So I hit it on the head at one stage, and then I approached all the other seed banks because they hadn't worked that out. And I offered to take 2 of their plants and to increase the CBD and reduce the THC. So maybe 20 of the seed companies, excuse me, 20 of the seed companies gave me 2 of their best THC plants. I did the work. It took me about 9 months to do everything. I made them test it and got them to put it to the lab, and they came back with the results. And then they had to buy from CBD Crew so we could continue making their seeds. And of course, after a year or 2, I mean, they all got the know-how and basically started making their own. So CBD Crew was a project seed company. Of course, I still do a lot of CBD stuff for different companies, and we still on Mr. Nice we offer certain CBD varieties, mainly 1-to-1, because I find that the 1-to-1 ratio does a lot of really good things to people. It doesn't get them so stoned. It just does the right thing. So I of course I did the very high CBD, the one that I call Yummy, which I still use to this day for all the extractions. It's about 16% CBD, and it was under 0.3% THC. So it was classified as hemp, basically. Because it wasn't on the list in Europe, I took it to America, and we did this big, huge outdoor crop, 300,000 plants. And I didn't realize that people would be wanting to use that as smoke. I was thinking it was for an extraction market, because the higher the CBD, the more extract you get off it, instead of the hemp varieties, which are very small. So that's how it all kind of started, and just expanded prolifically and exponentially. And it was, I had no idea it was going to go like that. Of course, I didn't even know that people wanted to smoke CBD. So yeah, I followed Rick Simpson, and he always used to say that 20% of THC and 20% of CBD in the oils were really medicinal, and so I was aiming at those things for people to make their own extractions at home. So of course the CBD Crew was the easiest way to get seeds all over the world without sort of too much attention drawn to it, and people not breaking too many rules. So yeah, it was an interesting way of coming about things.
Very, very interesting. And so you're in Switzerland now, and your children are now helping to run the business. And so what is the company's focus? Are you doing CBD, THC? Are you still hands-on in the company?
So I've got several companies. I still maintain the regular seeds of Mr. Nice, and we've got all of those regulars with the haze and the skunks and the males. So we've maintained that. I think we were one of the only ones at one stage doing regulars. Everyone had shifted to auto flowering and feminized and all that sort of crap. And I kind of maintained that one. And then I focused on the CBD stuff, the 1-to-1s for the medicinal people. And then I also started to do, I set up a company in Czech Republic with a doctor, and we started to make pills of different CBD quantities and with mixing different things in. And so I kind of did a little bit, I dabbled in everything on the spectrum, and I still do to this day. All of them still exist. They all do well at certain times and not well at other times. It depends on the market. It's a very volatile market, this, and people shift very quickly from one side of the boat to the other side of the boat. And then the next big thing is I don't know, in America they go for, sort of the highest THC and the highest terpene profile, but in Europe it's got a little bit more of a kind of a mature palate, I suppose, and you don't have to be the highest THC. I mean, everyone knows that that's not the one that gets you stoned. I mean, it gets you stoned, of course, and it works very well for extraction, but it's not always the the effect that you want. You know, some of the Thai weeds that were only 7 or 8% THC, they blew me out of the water, you know, and they were every time I kind of thinking, wow, that's amazing. So I never really focused too much on you know, doing the highest and the, you know, the strongest and the smelliest, you know. I kind of like to always keep, you know, 5 or 6 different trait selections in there, and equally as important as each other, you know.
In terms of effect?
Effect and sort of yield and obviously smell and the aromas and you know, how the plant looked, a self-supporting plant, or, you know, brittle plants didn't really make it with me. I always liked plants that were sturdy. Still do to this day. You know, otherwise there's a hell of a lot of work staking things and you know, so I tried to be practical in a larger scale, and that meant sort of selecting for, I mean, you know, look, a normal breed takes you 2 years to do from start to finish if you do everything right, and people are waiting 2 months for the next thing.
Yeah.
And of course, feminized seeds were able to do that because they were just coming up with a name and sort of sprayed a few chemicals on something and selfed it, and then they had some seed from that. And of course, everything has its, you know, sort of role to play and its relevance. But me, I was more focused on doing a real job, where people could go on with the job. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of hobby breeders that have followed me for hundreds of years. It feels like, but I mean, the last 2 or 3 decades since I've been online.
So
And
you're talking about the difference between offering regular seeds, which is what Mr. Nice does, as opposed to the feminized seeds that everybody.
Yeah, Mr. Nice is a bit of a purist company. I've maintained it because there's a lot of guys out there that didn't want to touch feminized or auto feminized or CBD. So I mean, I've still got a pretty good following of that, you know, and there's a lot of people that were looking for males. You know, all of a sudden everyone shifted to feminized, and there were no males around. So I got people coming to me to find males, you know what I mean? So it was it's really hard to anticipate all of the things that people were looking for, but you know, it popped up. And when you push down certain things, other things pop up. So it's been like that for quite some decades.
And you're still hands-on in the business. You were saying before we started that you're out there harvesting today.
Today I'm a bit tired. I'm sorry for that, but yeah, we're cutting about 8,000 medical plants. See, Switzerland now is, we have the license for medical cannabis, and we export it to Australia and Germany and different countries. I've got the white jacket on now after many years, and I'm a doctor over here. So, you know, 20 years earlier, I was, you know, scallywag. So, you know, I haven't really changed, but the laws caught up with the plant a little bit, and I think the commercialization of it and the tax money, everything sort of made sense to certain governments, and Switzerland's always been very good like that. Once they make a ruling for you, or you're an exception to the rule and you've got your reason for being, then they've respected it. So you know, I like that, and I like people to be working with confidence and not having to hide, and, you know, like be proud of what they do. And and everyone who works with us, they're a good group of people. They're young people, and they're really quite inspiring, and they're passionate about what they do. And I prefer that. You know, I'm happy to take people who know nothing about the cannabis plant and teach them, and then they teach me back. You know, so. Yeah. Cannabis has been a kind of a living teacher in a way for all of us, and still is. You know, I still find things that are amazing after all these years. You know, I'm doing some Neville Haze that I've crossed with a Haze AC, and I'm just doing the testing of maybe 15 different females at the moment, and it's amazing what's coming out of it again. You know, some of those really old smells, that cat pissy kind of smell when you burn it, you can really, you know, it turns the heads of people over 50 straight away. So you know, I've been in it so long that I remember everything that got me into it at the start, and all the smells that were really, wow, that's unique, you know. And so I've still, yeah, very much hands-on. I was cutting plants today and cleaning it, and we've, you know, got about 8,000 in the greenhouse to do for the next two weeks. So yeah, I love it. Again, it's, you know, when you have that white jacket on, you're all legal and everyone else can work with confidence. It really, you go back to being a kid again, and I bounce out of bed ready to go for the next day. So it's a good thing. Yeah.
Scott, you mentioned that you believe the cannabis industry is in a second wave. What does that mean, and what do you see for the future of the industry?
Well, you know, the first wave was just people came from all industries with a bunch of money and thought they're going to make more money, and they didn't know anything about the plant. You saw in Canada and America and Australia, I mean, a lot of people came in investing in companies that said they had the best laboratory, the best people behind them and everything like that. Yet they were probably not the best, because they hemorrhaged huge amounts of money and they didn't really come up with anything. I haven't seen anything that really blows me out of the water. You know, there's some good things, but nothing outrageous for the amount of brain power that went into it and the amount of money that was paid to these people.
Yeah.
So what I mean by the second wave is that the companies that have lasted through that first wave of the hype now are joining together, especially in Switzerland. I've got companies decided to do specific work. So some companies just do clones of certain plants and keeping the mothers there, and you can rely on them. And then there's others that do flower growing only, and then there's others that do the extraction. And when you put those little links together and everyone knows their start and end responsibilities, and they do it on time, the right way, and everything is described properly, and they pass it on to the next link, you become a pretty strong chain again. And that's what I mean by like a lot of small, high quality companies have become a big concern now. And I think that's what I'm involved in now. And and it makes my hair stand up a little bit, because I'm really happy they survived, you know, and we need a lot of people who do a good job at different things. And while we were doing everything ourselves in a small way, when you get large, you know, when you need, you know, a few 100,000 plants, you kind of need help and you need people to be scheduled in on time, and you need their work to be done properly and animal free and pest free and chemical free, so you can go on to the next one. And the medical industry, medical flower growing industry, is really relying on the microbiology, and so everyone has to be doing the right job. So we've got some ground rules, but the rest is up to them to do their job the right time and the right way. And I prefer to work with those smaller concerns of high quality products than to work with the big companies that came in with guns blasting, sort of thing.
Yeah. There was a conversation recently with someone where they were speaking about how there is a place for these massive, 100,000 square foot facilities for pharmaceutical production, for instance. But when it comes down to producing quality flower for patients and things, that smaller facilities and smaller operations can allow you to give more care to the plant, which is what the plant responds to.
Michelle, to this day, my best plants are growing in 20 light rooms. You know, so I've done the 300,000 outdoor clones. I've done the huge indoor operation where the same climate control for all plants doesn't work properly. You know, no matter what you do. But when you sort of keep it in a certain size and a certain amount of plants, the control and the quality and the atmosphere and the climate, everything is really good, and you come out with a really high quality product at the end. So bigger is not better. You know, we don't all have to go to Texas and be big cowboys. But the thing that I like is the small growers who have taken a lot of cues from different worlds, and then they've come into their little room and they just concentrate on the 1 or 2 strains that they've been doing for years, and they're busting seed every year, and they're crossing it, and they're inbreeding it and inbreeding it. And all of a sudden, I mean, Neville and I were always agreed after about 4 to 5 crops or generations, you've got something unique. Even if it started with us, it's completely different because of the selecting traits that you do. They're different to me. They're different to you. So you can make something unique once you have focus on the things that you're looking for. And nowadays, I mean, as well as doing the flower export and the extractions and fuels and all of that, we do bespoke plants for different companies. So they come to us with a range of different cannabinoids that they're looking for in certain concentration. And then it's our job to try to identify and find those things, you know. And so we don't always, but, you know, sort of maybe 8 out of 10 times we do. And then, of course, I've done that work and I pass the plant to them and they own it because they're paid for the work. And so that's kind of an interesting thing as well. So, I mean, it's part of what I love to do, but I can't always keep all of these plants, you know. It's like hundreds of thousands of different things. So I'm really happy that there are other people out there looking for things for their applications and that they come to us and we're able to do our bit and then they continue on. And, you know, there've been some very successful companies evolved out of our work. Yeah, for sure.
Fantastic. I have a few more questions before we run out of time. And these are going to be a little bit easier, kind of lighter topics. So what are you smoking these days?
Oh, well, you know, I everything basically. I still smoke, but everything.
What were you smoking before when we were starting?
Well, I was just smoking some mango haze actually. It's one of my favorites, I suppose. I spent a lot of time working on that plant. And the Afghan haze, actually at the moment, I've also, as well as the Neville haze with the new haze AC male, the Afghan haze is it's very hard to beat this. It's the building blocks of breeding. You got the Afghan, you got the haze, then you got the skunk and you got the Northern Lights. So when you put those building blocks together in different proportions, I think I explained it one time when we were having a conversation before, but I used to get the pure forms of those and then I would mix them in different proportions. And that would be kind of what you could roughly guess what it would be like.
Into a joint, you mean?
Yeah, in a joint. So, you know, 50-50, like an Afghan and a haze, and you put it together, make a joint, you think, wow, actually, I'm going to go with that one. And then, you know, and so it's a very rudimentary kind of way to test something for the future, because it's a very spatial kind of concept to come up with an idea for breeding. You know what I mean? It's like you have to visualize flavors and effect in your head. You know, it's a difficult thing. So when you can have a kind of a view into the future by doing something like that, it makes it a little bit more concrete and you know what to focus on a little bit better. Of course, still most of the great work is done accidentally. And you come up with some of the things that you go, wow, that's even better than I thought. So, you know, I mean, there's a lot of guys out there that are still ringing for advice online. I mean, they send emails and they're in the discussion. We have a forum on the Mr. Knife site. And there's really very, very brilliant academic biologists that are there and who've been in it for 20, 30 years. But they're really sharing a lot of new techniques and things with us. And I learn a lot from my own forum, you know what I mean? And I'm meant to be the moderator. But, I mean, being humble and being able to kind of learn from the students and the students learn from you, it's a reciprocal thing, will still be the best way to do it, you know? You don't need ego when you're working with plants, you know? The plant is the guide. And I always said that when you find the plant that works for you, that's the recipe. Focus on that and try to break it down to understand it. But don't think too much. Just sort of, you know, go with the flow and try to work it out by letting the plant show you the way.
And you might have answered this already, but what is your favorite Mr. Nice strain ever? Is it the mango haze or the Afghan haze?
The one I just smoked, but
the mango.
Listen, I mean, it's very hard. I mean, I'm a wine drinker as well, and you wake up every day, and some days I like to drink a glass of red wine. Some days I love to drink a glass of bubbly or a really good Chardonnay.
Yeah.
But I'm more towards the red wines and the kind of that warmth that it brings. And so, you know, I suppose the best thing that you can say is what you feel like that day. So
Yeah.
I would say the 50% haze and the 50% Afghans or Northern Light are really wonderful combinations. I can always, you know, the Northern Light haze is a very difficult plant to better. Super Silver haze is fantastic, but the haze has a bit of a temperamental gene in it. Some days you hit when you put in the seeds, and some days you don't. So, like for example, Super Silver haze was a selection that Neville did over quite some years, maybe 4 or 5 years. It was about from 1,000 different seeds of the progeny. He selected that. We sat around, we smoked everything. He thought that was the right one. And then I got mango haze out of probably 200 seeds. It still took the same amount of time because you got to test everything and you got to do it 2 or 3 times to make sure that you get it right. But, you know, you got to persist, and persistence eventually prevails, you know, and you will find those things. But they're not in if you put 1 seed of mango haze in, you're never going to find the mango haze that you're looking for. You have to do, you know, at least 50 seeds sort of thing.
So it sounds like maybe mango haze is the
Mango haze is my personal favorite, and Afghan haze definitely as well. But then the widows are great as well. I mean, it depends on if you really want to get stoned and sort of watch a movie, or if you want to be a bit bubbly and go out and have a meal with some friends. You know, I've got a few friends that bake up some edibles, you know, and I always give them different things, and it's amazing what it does when you can mix it with butter and the effect and how long it lasts. So, you know, to tell you the truth, medical patients don't really smoke. You know, when you're really feeling sick, it's not the serious medical patients that smoke. So edibles and gummies and things like that are really for that type of person. And I think they're a bit strong for me, to tell you the truth. So I'm a little bit, you know, shy. I don't take too much. They last a long time. But when you're sick and you've got, you know, some serious pain, those things that maybe knock me out, they just make those people normal. And so you know it because you've been doing medical cannabis for quite some time. And so, you know, you can't say that's my favorite, but it will be your favorite too. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, it doesn't work that way.
No.
Yeah. Well, speaking of the mango haze, I have some mango haze Mr. Nice seeds that I'm going to pop like tomorrow. So,
fantastic.
Yeah, so viewers, follow along for the next few months. You'll get to see those growing along. I have just one more question for you, Scott. Words of wisdom for the next generation of cannabis breeders.
Oh, you know, words of wisdom. There's a lot of profound things that I could probably say, but respect the plant. Learn before you start manipulating. Just like, you know, don't only run after the trends and the high THC numbers. You know, sort of kind of respect what you get, go on with the job and try to do something that will help a lot of people. I mean, they're the kind of sort of morals that I have in my head, but I'm always learning. It's never finished. I mean, if it was finished, I would have been done 10 years ago. But I kind of think that you don't exploit cannabis, let it sort of enhance your life, and then find the things that really work for you and respect them and go on with the job is probably the best advice I could give people. Instead of just going for the high numbers and the strongest terpenes and things like that, which we all tend to do, unfortunately. You know?
Yeah, it's a bit of a trap. Yeah, very cool. Yeah, I had a breeder on, young breeder on recently in Portland, Oregon, and he has been breeding only for maybe 7 years or 8 years or so, but really exciting to see the you know the new varieties he's coming out with, and this kind of, you know, energy, you know, wanting to get these new varieties out to people. And
listen, there's a lot of excellent growers out there. There's a lot of excellent young hobby breeders and real breeders. Just because maybe they don't do anything for me doesn't mean that they're incorrect, you know. So I think if you breed with integrity and you preserve genetics that are worthy for you to go back to, at least keep them in seed form. One day the stars align and you come across something that's quite unique, and then a lot of people love it, and there will always be evolving traits and different trends for the people who are using the products. But I'm still a bit old school in my ways, and you know, I do feminized seed and I do auto flowering seed for many companies, and I know how to do all of it, but that's just a means to an end sometimes, you know, and sometimes you've got to do that, you know, to keep the rooms going. I understand to be practical as well, but be humble and kind of learn. And preserving genetics is really something that good gardeners will do. Once they find that one, it will be in their library for 20 or 30 years, you know, because they'll always go back to it. So I hope maybe your listeners learn something about that from listening to us talk. But yeah.
Thank you for the words of wisdom, Scott. It's been such a pleasure speaking with you today, and that's all the time that we have. But thank you.
Thanks, Michelle, for taking the time as well, and I wish you and the viewers all the best.
Yeah. Thanks for watching, everyone. We'll see you soon.